Welcome to this second part of the series called God's Promises. My name is Ria and I'll guide you through this class. So please sit down on your mats. Find a comfortable way to sit with the spine tall and your shoulders maybe moved a little bit back. We will be together in a slow yoga class, which means yoga a bit slow and taking a lot of deep breaths in each pose. Now close your eyes and just for a moment sit on your mat. And then think about what you are thinking about. At this moment, this hour, where are your thoughts going? And whenever it was in the future or in the past, let that go. Maybe inhale and exhale into God's hands, whatever is filling up your mind right now. And today will be a simple class with just one Bible verse from Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. NIV version says, I will never leave you, never will I forsake you. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. This is a promise from God. In my life, I have felt like God was far away or did leave me. When I was 19, I went 3.5 months to Thailand working in an AIDS hospice. I wanted to show people God's love and healing, but God just felt like He was far, far away. I went home, praying to God, crying out to God, where are you? Then all of a sudden I was invited 5 months to Australia on a DTS, disabled training school. I could do the training all for free. I asked God, should I go? I didn't want to go actually at the beginning. I didn't feel like God was saying anything, but I ended up leaving anyway. The first weeks at this DTS, I was sitting down with my legs crossed and my arms crossed, just listening and critiquing things I heard. Until God all of a sudden just opened up and I released and said, okay, God, you be the filter, not my mind, not my culture. You filter everything I hear here. And God felt like He was a part of my life again with a really strong feeling. I went home, had a few months where God was just the most amazing person in the whole world, like falling in love with God kind of a feeling. But after, I don't know, half a year or so, I got into a hard place, just mentally. I kind of think I burned out. I wanted to serve everyone around me and did not take care of my own needs. So God disappeared again. And it was a hard, painful time. Slowly I came out of it. And now, 20 years later, looking back, all of this, all of what had happened, I can see God in everything that happened. He did not leave me. He did not forsake me. But He did take me through some really rough patches. That's what I feel like, at least. But this promise that God will never leave and never forsake us is not an emotional thing. It's a promise. Penetrating feelings, thoughts. So let's lean into it, whatever our situation might be. Maybe you sit still for a few more moments. Or maybe you start to do some small side bends from side to side. You can keep your eyes closed if you like. Maybe rolling your head a little bit. Letting your right hand reach down on the right side of the mat, lifting up left arm, bending to the side. Let your chest lean towards your right knee and walk your hands kind of to your left side, leaning forward until you reach the side and lift up your right arm, maybe looking up. And let's do that a few more times to warm up our spine. So you can go a little bit slower or faster than I do here, as long as you move a little bit. As we move and breathe on our mat today, let's stand firm on the mat, even though we might feel like we're falling once in a while, or feel at unease, or feel tired. We are standing strong in God's promise. Maybe you take a hold of your mat, just to make it very concrete and physical. Sometimes we need that. Find downward facing dog. If that pose doesn't work for you, go for your all fours like this. Always a nice pose to do instead of downward facing dog. But if you're into downward facing dog, spread your fingers out and lift your hip up, and then bend one knee at the time to slowly ease some warmth into your legs, hips, arms as well. Take a look at your feet, hip width distance. And if you take a look at your fingers, spread them out and make sure you have some distance in between your hands, wider than your feet. Now walk your hands back towards your feet. So you're somewhere at the back end of your mat and hang into a forward fold, swaying from side to side. bend more down in your knees and stop your swing. Instead, move into chair pose. So sit low, knees and toes somewhat aligned. Try to see if you can lift your quads a little bit to engage your thighs even more. Sit lower or higher, whatever you're up to today. And then that stand tall. Throw our arms out to the side and open up. You will never leave me. You will never forsake me, no matter what happens. Help me trust it. Believe in it. Now gather your palms in front of your head, tall spine. Fold forward, drawing your hands and down front of your chest, and then into your forward fold again. Bend your knees as much as you need. Chair pose. Sit low. Lift your arms in front of your jaw. Stand up in high mountain and again move your arms out to the side. We'll do that a few times to warm up our body before we slow down the tempo. So inhale, stand strong, palms together. Exhale as you move forward, remember those knees. Inhale as you prepare your chair, sit low. Lift your arms, exhale if you kind of stand there. Inhale, stand tall. Exhale, move into whatever kind of back bend that works for you. Inhale, slowly gather your palms. Exhale, lean forward. Inhale, bend your knees. Exhale, sit low. 2 more times. Inhale, rise up. And move back, open up. Inhale, lift up your arms. Exhale, move forward and surrender what you feel like you need to surrender. Bend your knees, bowing down somewhat. Last time through. Open up. Straight spine. Move forward. Bend your knees. Chair. And mountain pose. Maybe inhale, God will never. Exhale, leave me. God will never. Exhale, leave me. Keep breathing in a few more times using that Bible verse. Open up your eyes. Take a look at the ground before you, moving into a little bit of a balance pose. Right knee, lift your knee up and let your right hand hold your knee. Maybe you want to take out left arm to the side. Maybe you can't see it right now. If you want to open up your knee to the side, maybe lift the knee up a little bit further, do that. Squeezing your glutes and breathing. See if you can keep your balance, close your hip, and step this right leg just 1 foot or 1 step in front of you. Closing your hip, which means squaring them off with the short end of the mat. Lean forward in pyramid pose. Now you can just take a hold of your thigh and stay here if that's enough. If you have blocks, you might use those. If you're able to reach all the way down, go there. Forehead sinks towards the front knee or shin. Create length in your spine.
See if you can kind of tuck your inner thighs a little bit together, moving your hip just a little bit to your right side. Maybe you feel a really deep stretch on the back of your hamstrings. Release of that stretch, moving up, however you want to do that, climbing up the leg maybe. And step to the middle of your mat. Now your left leg is kind of ready to be lifted up. Take your left hand on the knee joint. Maybe right arm out, help us keep the balance. Flex your foot. And draw your air in all through the nose and all down to the bottom of your belly. Creating space to breathe. Open up your hip to the side. If you want to. If there's too much, just lower down and do the balance pose in the direction of the leg with your feet further down to the ground. One more breath. Closing your hip again, stepping this left foot a bit forward. Again, squaring off the hip. Feet are somewhat aligned with the long end of the mat. Maybe your back foot turns a little bit out to the side if that's better. Closing up your hips and leaning forward, making sure you can stay here if that is enough, or lean further down. Small micro bend in both knees and try to relax at least the back of your legs as much as you can. There's definitely an element of balance here. And notice if your hip moves out, maybe to your left side, and if it does, move it a little bit further to your right, so that your hips are aligned with your feet and you don't move your hip too far out to your left side. As you inhale, maybe on your next exhale, move a bit further down in your stretch. And let go. Now both hands down on the ground, walk your feet back. Ready for a little bit of warmth and strength. Plank pose. I hope you recall that you are definitely invited to come down on your knees or your elbows if you want to do this a little bit easier. Get some length in between each shoulder blade. Not like drawing your belly down, but lifting and creating length. Micro bend the elbows. Distribute the weight a little bit out to your fingers as well. And knuckles. Also, when we have a hard time, like this maybe, God will never leave and never forsake us. Okay, bend your knees, child's pose. If you're not ready for that, find downward facing dog. Spread out your fingers again, find down dog, just for a few breaths. Lift up your hip, let your heels sink as low as they can. Kind of arch your back a little bit so that your sitting bones reach a little bit higher up, creating more stretch on your hamstrings, maybe also on your back. Warrior 2, next pose. The right leg lifted up towards the sky and then step it through. Remember, you can lift the fingers off here to make space for that leg to land. Turn the back foot around, heel somewhat aligned, and lift up in Warrior 2. Bending in the front knee. Maybe taking a look at that knee, see if it falls inwards or if it actually keeps it aligned with their angle there in front. Now the front hand here. Move it to the inside of your thigh and maybe further down, reaching down towards the back leg. I'll just turn to, you can see like this, like pointing down to the back leg. And the back arm lifts up, so you're leaning towards the front leg, standing like this. If it's too much, just use the thigh there. But try to create length from hand to hand, using your core. The top shoulder, move it a little further back to open up your chest. And if there's more strength in your thighs, go a little bit lower. 1 or 2 more breaths. Release, hands down on the inner thighs. Pivot the front foot there around. Go into wide-legged forward fold. And maybe just swaying from side to side. Bending one knee, bending the other. A little bit of a fluid posture or movement. Walk your hands to the front end of your mat again and step your right leg back, downward facing dog. Remember, all fours as an option here. Notice if your arms are somewhat aligned with your ears. Now left leg. Here we go. Lift it up. And again, through to the top or the front of the mat. Turn the back foot around, aligned with the short end of the mat. Lift up and kind of let your arms grow out to the side. Spread out your fingers. And maybe relax your hands if that feels comfortable. Look toward the front hand and make sure the back shoulder is not kind of moving forward. It really likes to do that. So square it off with the hip. And as we did before, front hand here, pointing to the back foot, somewhat aligned with the back leg there. The top hand moving forward. This is just a version of our side stretch. A little bit harder than if you keep your elbow here. So remember that option also. Using your core, engaging your root lock. Maybe looking up if your balance is okay with that. Let go. Hands down, inside of that front foot. Turn the front foot and let your toes point a little bit inward. And maybe create more length in between your legs if that works for you. If you can't reach the floor, blocks might be nice to have. I will be standing still. Top of the head moving down. Maybe you can't go that far down. Never mind, as long as you feel, or maybe feel a bit of a stretch on the back, or maybe on the inside of your legs. Having our head down is always a thing that, at least for me, it creates some energy and just a little bit of new strength, at least when I lift up my head again. Okay, walk your hands to the front end of your mat. This time, come into seated pose in the middle of your mat somewhere. Navel in as you lean back. Let your heels stay down in the mat, toes pointing up. And let's gather our palms and stay still, but move. Stay still when we have moved our hands out to the side, navel in, and stay here. If it hurts anywhere in your back, please sit up a little bit taller. What we do on one side, we do on the other, so move your arms around, reaching to the other side. Okay, to the middle. Extend your legs out, maybe a small lift in the knees as you do your forward fold with your chest leading. Grab your legs, your feet, if you're able to reach down there for a deep forward fold. With the Bible verse, I know that it can be a really tough verse for some. If for some reason we have experiences of abandonness and somebody has left us for some reason, it can be hard to trust. And I don't have any really good answers or things to say other than hang on. Asking God for help to trust, because there's so much freedom in knowing that you are never alone. Move further back on the mat. Laying down. Take your toes somewhere, not completely towards your hip, but somewhere in there. Bridge pose. Engage your root lock, your glutes, buttocks. Roll your hip up all the way. And when you feel like you're kind of up there, walk your shoulder blades back underneath yourself, kind of squeezing them together a little bit underneath yourself. Now there's so many options to do with your hands, but if you want to support your hip, take your hands underneath your hip here and lift a little bit if you can. It's not everybody who can reach. And now walk your shoulder blades out again. From your shoulder blades, roll slowly down on the mat. And maybe you side out when you get down there. Oh, that was nice to come down again. Reversed pigeon pose. Right leg up. Draw the knee out to the side. Stay here if that's enough, or take your right hand in between that 3-angled window and pull your left leg in. Probably you feel a stretch in your outer glutes there. The word forsake is a little bit old word. If you were to exchange that word with something else that makes sense to you, what would that word be? God will never leave, never forsake, never what? You. You can keep pondering upon that as you switch legs, do this reverse pigeon on the other side. And let go. Resting pose. And I know, especially when we're online, we tend to don't do resting pose because we have things on our schedule that we want to reach. But if I tell you 3 minutes, will you please stay on the mat with me? And I'll invite you to do a mantra meditation on this Bible verse. Try to keep your attention on inhaling. God will never leave me. Exhale. Or the other word I asked you, maybe that makes more sense to your body, soul, and mind. So try to stay with that. And whenever your mind just goes off somewhere else, let that thought go and come back as you inhale and exhale. I know it's hard, but let's try. But first of all, find your resting pose. Feet out to the side, hands down on the ground. Shoulders relaxed and face relaxed. Timers start now. 3 minutes. God will never leave me.
Now is the time to close the meditation, unless you want to stay there, here down on the mat. If you're ready, wriggle your toes, fingers, wrists and ankles, elbows and knees. And maybe you stretch or hop your knees or whatever feels good. Roll onto your side and sit up on your mat. May God bless you and keep you. Thank you for sharing this class with me, and thank you for helping me and you maybe reach out with all of God's amazing promises during this time. So thank you for sharing and subscribing and all that. See you around.